Like I've been saying as of late, via Renfield, another Universal movie, right? Just like this one. The vampire trend is starting to make a resurgence, and maybe that's not necessarily the main focal point of this project. Maybe this one has a little more atmosphere outside of that. Because this project, by comparison to Renfield, is a little denser, at least in my first inclinations and entertainment of it. But it's interesting to see, again, like I said, this phenomenon emerging, not just in smaller pictures. And there's been a couple that have emerged right alongside Renfield in what I've called, well, I don't think it's as much brand mooching, but it's like a piggyback pictures, right? It's this trend that's starting to come back where you have a larger release and some of these smaller films. I didn't expect two. And granted, they are separated by release months a bit. Renfield's currently in theaters as I speak, I believe. I'm still wanting to go watch that one. But Last Voyage of the Demeter does not debut until August. This is very much an early trailer debut. And it has, like I said, a little more atmosphere and depth than... well, I don't want to say that. That's the wrong way to phrase it. Last Voyage of the Demeter is just a very different movie, by many respects, from Renfield. But there, like I said, there's a thread with the vampire connection based on, I believe, the novel. This film, though, might... Again, I don't know. I'm looking at this very much with fresh eyes and fresh knowledge. So I'm... In the capacity of what you're going to be getting from me, it will be more so a critique and understanding of the trailer as it exists. Not the basis. Though I will say the poster is quite engaging. It's quite exquisite, in fact, in my opinion. And it's actually... It's kind of funny, come to think of it, in terms of recent debuts. Like... pirate-looking era type ships at sea and stuff like that. Even that's got a relevancy. I think, for example, I don't know how potent the Peter Pan movie is going to be from Disney, but like there's a connection there. This film's, again, there's certain trends I feel like this film is kind of riding alongside, but maybe this will be its own thing. I imagine probably it would be. I've seen some chatter circulating online in respect to it that it seems to be getting some traction, and I'm genuinely curious. Like I said, that poster is pretty engrossing just on its face. And casting attributions as well, David Desmalchian, I did see him credited in this, and I like his performances quite a bit. And there's probably other names maybe I'm not recognizing at the moment, or maybe a lot of fresh presences. I'm always eager to engage new faces. Let's take a look at Last Voyage of Demeter. And like I said, this is very much a fresh perspective that you're going to be getting with me. Maybe for some of you, this is going to be the same baseline we operate from. But to give ourselves a strong foundation, this is the IMDb synopsis, so we know more going in. Based on a single chapter, The Captain's Log, from Bram Stoker's classic 1897 novel Dracula, I've never read it, the story is set aboard the Russian schooner Demeter, which was chartered to carry private cargo, 24 unmarked wooden crates, from Carpathia to London. The film will detail the strange events that befell the doomed crew as they attempt to survive the ocean voyage, stalked each night by a terrifying presence on board the ship. When it finally arrived near Whitby Harbour, it was a derelict. There was no trace of the crew. Like I said, strong vibe to some adjacent pictures, whether it be just the vampire regard with the Dracula story, or the book, from my understanding, or the pirate connection even, or ships set at sea, if you want to call it that. I don't know. I don't think necessarily it's maybe going to be specifically a pirates movie. I mean, I don't know, but I don't know. I find it kind of interesting. It's a European set film too, at least in the Voyage, I believe. So that's got me enticed. I mean, European movies, at least in visualization, quite bring me in because it's a beautiful geographic area of the world. So on presentation, I might find this quite charming. Again, I've seen a lot of traction occurring. That'd be my suspicion that the visualization of the movie is going to be competent and attractive because, again, of how beautiful the poster is just to stare at. Let's take a look at The Voyage of Demeter and engage it, again, like I said, as somebody who's never read the novel, so he's not operating from a familiar basis here. Maybe like some of you, maybe we're on even footing. But let's judge what we can understand for ourselves.
Evil is on board. Powerful evil.
We call him Dracula.
Okay, so very much... Okay. I didn't realize it was that explicit. So this is very much a vampire...
From Romania to London.
Pseudo-pirate movie hybrid. Maybe it is like a pirate movie. I'm not, again, exactly sure.
Out at sea.
But as I said, the trend is manifesting.
This here is Clemens. He's a doctor.
You dress like a learned man.
University of Cambridge. I've known my way around the boat.
Our charter has agreed to pay a bonus for timely arrival in London.
Let me show you the ship. This here is Huckleberry. We knock on wood like this to give the eels clear.
Good so far. Again, very scenic delivery, and by comparison to other similar works in years past or recent, it's got an engaging picture. Ooh.
Ripped apart the animals.
All the livestock.
This looks like a bite.
Grisly, realistic. I mean, it fits for a vampire film.
Evil is on board.
And where Renfield has a more comedic presence in part,
Powerful evil.
you got more of a straight-up ethereal horror film.
In the night, it drinks our blood. He is here. We call him Dracula.
I was gonna say, you're gonna do like a background shot? That looked good.
Did you see the size of that bloody thing?
Like I said, very atmospheric movie, but especially on the horror side.
Cursed thing.
He is on
This
this
is gonna be a strong debut.
which means that we will never leave it.
Hopefully the film is good, but I believe, at least on first presumption,
May God have mercy on us all.
I'm game to try it out. I mean, I don't know if it's in everybody's taste. I do understand, right? There are plenty of horror fans, and I myself am more a thriller guy, but I like the general atmosphere of a scary movie. And so, The Last Voyage of a Demeter, in what's presented here, again, the foundation's pretty strong. I did, like I said, get a real pirates, like, Lost at Sea type vibe. That's just how it looks. And it gives this film, at least in my mind, a bit of an individualized presence, where maybe I think of other projects that are maybe adjacent, at least in depiction. For example, you know, especially on the fantasy lines, like, I'm trying to think something, yeah, like, you know, that old Doctor Who episode from Series 6, Matt Smith's run, if you're a Whovian at all, or, I've wavered since, but like in the good Doctor Who years. Season 6, episode 3, I believe. It was the Black Spot one with the siren. This reminds me a lot of that in tone, not necessarily in visualization, but, and that's much more like a sci-fi horror type episode. I mean, Doctor Who is not necessarily mainstream horror in tone, but they've employed that on occasion. That episode certainly fit in, you know, the presence. This reminds me a lot of that in personality. I've not watched many of these types of seafaring projects in a while now. I should go back and review, but I've seen plenty over the course of my life. So an illustration, but I know where I was going with that. Very recently, I've seen a lot in the way of more recent or some older horror releases. And this just isn't necessarily a connection point in visualization or storytelling that I have entertained lately. So for me, I find this exists in a bit of a fresh space, though there are deliberate horror tones that are usual and expected among other projects. I mean, the background shot of Dracula, by the way, who looks great. I do like the individuality of this piece on part of, again, recent offerings where it's set apart slightly. Because, again, Renfield is much more comedic. This is more a creature horror film set in a fantastical history scenario based on a book. So again, like I said, this project has a lot of depth to its release. But to be fair to Renfield, because that one also looked good, it's different, right? It's very much its own creative work. So even in this trend of vampires, and as I've said with that phenomenon in trends, I mean, horror and thriller, this is extremely dominant. You have mainstay elements. And the vampire one has been tossed around a bit over the last couple of years. I mean, it was big with Twilight, but then it just kind of faded out a bit. Whereas, let's say, nuns, clowns, zombies, sharks, dinos, those all popped up in its place. The vampire trend is starting to come back again. Specifically, it seems for Universal. Especially among major releases now, as The Last Voyage of a Demeter alludes to. What I'm seeing here is actually really good. It's a little stronger by comparison to maybe other recent... Yeah, I brought up the example earlier of Peter Pan, the new Peter Pan and Wendy movie. I don't find that one as attractive as much. I'm going to cover that in a second. I haven't even looked at that one yet. I'm so behind on everything. But I would be more in shape for a film that has a distinctive presence and seems to be presented with with substantial confidence in realization. As a creature horror film, I feel that this exists in a bit of an individualized space among comparative projects right now. In realization, it being a movie adaptation from a book, or at least one chapter of a book, the construction of a creature as well, it's extremely believable. I'd be entertained in watching it. I mean, we got a while to see more of it as well as it unearths its presence, given that this is coming out in August. So we'll get a wider perspective on the movie going forward, but I'm engaged to watch it. Again, I've not seen films with this type of personality in a while in regards to being, at sea and having some creature running amok. It's a bloodsucker. I'm game. I'll keep an eye on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below as well if you wish to disclose your perspective and your thoughts on the last voyage of a Demeter. I'm engaged with it. And in terms, I'd say with the summer feel as well, there's a bit of a point of originality for me as well, because it's not, I know there's been releases in years past that have fit this model, but presently from what I'm thinking of, I haven't been looking as much ahead into possibilities of movie viewing in the summertime, and a horror release might be interesting. Beyond just going to my library and picking up something that's already available and people already have watched. In terms of new fare, I'd be game to watch. Oh! Who's behind this movie? Hang on a second. Andre... I'm probably going to mispronounce the last name, so I'm not going to try, but some of you might know how to pronounce it correctly. Why is his name familiar? Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I liked that. Okay, he was the director of that movie. Didn't he do something else, or did he not? And he's going to be doing the sequel. His name sounds really familiar to other works. I'm not sure. Maybe I've seen it in passing somewhere. Okay. There's a familiarity of him in terms of past work via Scary Stories, and I liked that movie. I know not everybody did. I liked it. I thought it was pretty strong as a PG-13 film. Even admit, because I know there's a bit of a iffy track record among the horror landscape for that, and I've certainly seen plenty of releases that attest to that area of discrepancy in expectation. I trust him with this movie. In terms of the performance, cinematically, it really pops for me in terms of entrance. I'm game. I'll keep an eye on it. I'm sure we'll get another trailer in time, and of course I will definitely cover that in this channel going forward. I'm looking forward to a summertime release for The Last Voyage of a Demeter, even though maybe I'll read the book, or at least the one chapter. It'd be much easier reading. I have barely any time to read these days. Maybe I'll be able to read that in advance. Or maybe I won't. You kind of throw that around sometimes. Do I want to go in informed, or do I want to go in, and judge the movie, on a first basis just by itself? We'll see what I do in time, but I'll keep The Last Voyage of a Demeter in mind. Looks pretty good from what I'm seeing. Competent picture. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.